I paid for my sister's education while working 2 jobs, only to have her call me a loser at a family dinner. She was shocked when I stopped paying her rent and told everyone why she could no longer afford her lifestyle. When my younger sister Emily got accepted into her dream college, my whole family treated it like she just won the lottery. My parents couldn't stop smiling, practically glowing with pride, and Emily immediately started talking about the amazing career she was sure she was going to have someday. Meanwhile, I stood off to the side, doing the math in my head and wondering how any of this was actually going to work. The truth was, my parents didn't have the money to pay for her education, and they made sure that point came across loud and clear. It started with little comments slipped into family conversations. "Emily is so smart, but college costs so much these days," my mom would say, shooting a look in my direction like I wasn't already connecting the dots. At the time, I didn't have much either. I was working as a mechanic and trying my best to save up for a house of my own. Still, Emily was my sister, and I kept telling myself that helping her out wouldn't hurt too much. So I stepped in. At first, it was small stuff, covering textbooks here, helping with groceries there. But it didn't stay small for long. Before I knew it, I was paying her rent, her utilities, and even her nights out whenever she said she needed to de-stress. Every time she asked for money, there was always an excuse ready. "I'll pay you back once I graduate," or "Mom and Dad just can't help right now." What made it worse was that my parents acted like this was my duty. "Family takes care of family," my dad would say, as if I wasn't already killing myself working 2 jobs just to keep everything afloat. Emily, on the other hand, carried herself like the world revolved around her. She'd post photos online of fancy dinners and weekend trips, smiling like she wasn't living entirely off my paycheck. I kept telling myself it was temporary. Once she graduated, it would all be worth it. Or at least that's what I tried to believe. But deep down, resentment was starting to creep in. My life was completely on pause while hers was racing ahead, and I was the one paying for it all. I honestly thought things would improve once Emily settled into her college routine. I figured she'd eventually realize how much I was sacrificing and maybe show a little appreciation. Instead, her sense of entitlement only got worse. The first real red flag was how she spent money. While I was skipping meals and pulling late shifts to cover her bills, Emily was showing off a brand new wardrobe online. Designer handbags, trendy shoes, upscale restaurants. Stuff I couldn't even dream of buying for myself. At first, I tried to justify it. Maybe she had a part-time job, or maybe she was just exaggerating for social media. But when I finally asked her about it, she brushed it off. "Everyone at school dresses like this," she said. "I don't want to look like I don't belong." It wasn't just about money anymore. It was her attitude toward everything. She treated me like I was nothing more than a walking ATM. She never asked how I was doing or whether I needed help. And my parents didn't back me up either. Anytime I tried to explain how much I was struggling, they guilt me into silence. "She's your sister," my mom would say. "She's building her future. You should be proud to support her." But this wasn't just support, it was sacrifice. My weekends disappeared. My savings were wiped out. And that house I'd always dreamed of owning, I had to forget about it. Meanwhile, Emily couldn't even bother to say thank you. Instead, she'd call just to complain about her professors, her workload, or her roommates. Not once did she ask how I managed to juggle 2 jobs just to keep her afloat. All the frustration I'd been bearing finally started bubbling to the surface. I was exhausted from feeling like my life didn't matter as long as hers kept moving forward. The real breaking point came when Emily casually mentioned she was thinking about studying abroad for a semester. She didn't ask if I could afford it. She didn't even hesitate. She just assumed I'd handle it. "I think it would be such an amazing experience," she said cheerfully over the phone. "It costs a little more, but it's once in a lifetime, right?" I sat there gripping my phone, stunned. I was already barely managing her regular expenses, and now she expected me to fund a semester overseas. When I brought it up to my parents, hoping, for once, they'd step in, they did the opposite. "This is an incredible opportunity," my mom said. "You'll figure it out. You always do." I couldn't believe it. No concern for how hard I was working. No acknowledgement of what this was costing me. Just the expectation that I'd keep sacrificing, because that's apparently who I was in this family. At the same time, Emily's behavior became impossible to ignore. She called to complain about the most ridiculous things, her roommate borrowing her shoes, or the campus cafe not having real lattes. She even started taking subtle digs at me, joking about how I was always working and saying I was basically married to my job. One night at work, while I was venting during a break, a coworker shook his head and said, "She doesn't appreciate you at all. You bend over backwards, and she acts like you owe her." For the first time, I seriously wondered if he was right. Then came the family dinner. It was supposed to be casual, just a chance to catch up. Emily was home on break, and my parents invited me over. I didn't really want to go, but I figured I could tolerate a few hours. As soon as I walked in, though, I could feel the tension. My parents were hovering over Emily, asking about her classes, her social life, and whether she needed anything else for school. I sat there quietly, waiting for someone, anyone, to ask how I was doing. Of course, that never happened. Halfway through dinner, Emily brought up the study abroad program again. She went on and on about how incredible it would be and how everyone she knew was doing it. Then she looked straight at me and said, "I hope you're ready to pick up some extra work, big brother. These programs aren't cheap." I froze. I couldn't believe she had the nerve to say that out loud, like it was already decided. Trying to keep things light, I said, "Maybe you should get a part-time job." She laughed. "A part-time job? That's hilarious. I'm way too busy with school." That was it. I set my fork down and looked right at her. "You've got to be kidding me. You really expect me to keep paying for your lifestyle forever while you do nothing?" The room went dead silent. My parents stared at me like I'd just cursed at the table. Emily looked shocked for half a second, then snapped back. "What is your problem?" she shot back. "You're just bitter. Just because your life isn't going anywhere doesn't mean you get to take it out on me." That hit harder than anything else. After everything I'd given up, my money, my time, my dreams, that's how she saw me. A failure. Her words hung in the air, sharp and painful, like a slap I never saw coming. I could feel my blood heating up, but there was no way I was letting her get the final word. "Bitter," I said, leaning forward. "You really think I'm bitter because my life isn't going anywhere? My life stalled because I was too busy paying for yours, Emily." My parents jumped in immediately, just like always. "That's inappropriate," my mom snapped. "You're her brother. It's your responsibility to support her." "My responsibility?" I repeated, letting out a dry, humorless laugh. When did it become my responsibility to work 2 jobs so she could live comfortably? When did it become my job to give up my entire future so hers could be handed to her on a silver platter? Emily crossed her arms and rolled her eyes. "Oh, here we go," she muttered. "The martyr act." That was the moment I knew I was done. "You know what?" I said, standing up. "Go ahead and call me a failure. At least everything I have, I earned. What have you done? Nothing. You sit around spending my money while acting like you're better than me." Then I turned to my parents. "And you two aren't innocent either. You've encouraged this behavior every step of the way. I'm done playing along. I'm not paying for anything anymore. Not her rent. Not her tuition. Nothing." The silence that followed was crushing. Emily's face drained of color, and for the first time, she looked truly shaken. "You can't do this," she said, her voice trembling. "How am I supposed to live?" "You'll figure it out," I replied, grabbing my jacket. "I've been doing that for years. It's your turn now." I walked out of that dinner filled with anger, but also relief. For the first time in my life, I'd finally stood up for myself. Still, I knew the fallout was coming. It didn't take long. The next morning, my phone blew up with calls and texts. Emily was first. She started with passive-aggressive messages. "Thanks for ruining dinner. Hope you feel good about abandoning your own sister." When I didn't respond, the guilt trips followed. "You're really just going to leave me like this? After everything I've been through?" I ignored them all. If she wanted to play the victim, she could do it without me. Then my parents stepped in. My mom called first, her voice heavy with disappointment. "I don't know what's gotten into you," she said. "Emily needs your help. She's your sister." "She's been my financial responsibility for years," I shot back. "That ends now. It's time for her to grow up." My dad called later, just as angry. "You're being selfish," he said. "You're punishing her for no reason. What's she supposed to do now?" "Get a job," I replied flatly. "Like everyone else." The real kicker came a few days later when Emily's landlord called me. Apparently, she told him I was the one paying her rent, and when the payment didn't go through, he came straight to me. "She's not my problem anymore," I told him. "You need to talk to her." That conversation must have scared her, because a few days later she showed up at my apartment without warning. She looked panicked and unkempt, nothing like the confident, entitled version of her I was used to. "You can't just cut me off," she said the second I opened the door. "Yes, I can," I replied, leaning against the doorframe. She shifted nervously, like a kid caught in a lie. Hearing "no" clearly wasn't something she was used to, from me or anyone else. "You don't understand," she said, her voice rising. "If you don't help me, I'm going to lose my apartment. I can't move back home. Mom and Dad don't have space." "Not my problem," I said evenly. Her mouth fell open. "Not your problem? You're my brother." "And for years," I said, stepping forward, "I've been more than that. I've been your safety net, your bank account, your excuse to avoid growing up. I worked 2 jobs so you could live your dream. And the one time I asked for respect, you called me a failure. So no, Emily, this isn't my problem anymore." She stared at me like she couldn't believe what she was hearing. I didn't mean it like that, she said weakly. I was upset. I wasn't thinking. You never think, I shot back. You never think about anyone but yourself. You used me. You used mom and dad. And now you're panicking because you finally have to face the consequences. Then she started crying, big, dramatic sobs that might have worked on someone else. They didn't work on me. You're not going to guilt me into changing my mind, I said. You need to handle this on your own. Get a job. Budget your money. Do whatever you have to do, but leave me out of it. She wiped her tears angrily. You're being cruel. You're supposed to help family. That's what family does. No, I said firmly. Family supports each other. They don't take advantage of each other and call it love. Until you understand that, don't come back here. I closed the door before she could make another excuse. For the first time in a long while, I felt like my life was finally mine again. Still, I braced myself for what came next. Emily wasn't the type to suffer quietly, and I knew she'd turn this into a full-blown sob story. Sure enough, my parents called the next day, furious. My mom started with the usual guilt trip. How could you do this to your sister? She demanded. She's struggling, and you walked away when she needed you most. Struggling? I snapped. She's been living off my paycheck for years while acting like the world owed her something. Maybe it's time she learned what struggling actually means. My dad chimed in next, accusing me of being heartless and ungrateful for everything they'd done for me. That one actually made me laugh. Ungrateful? I said. You've got to be kidding. I've been funding Emily's lifestyle while you cheered her on like she was the next big success story. Meanwhile, I've been working nonstop just to keep her comfortable. The more I laid everything out, the quieter they got. By the end of the call, all they could say was that I was tearing the family apart. As for Emily, her meltdown was public and dramatic. She flooded social media with vague posts about betrayal and how some people only care about themselves. She even had the nerve to start a GoFundMe for her rent, claiming she'd been blindsided by an unexpected expense. Her friends commented with fake concern, offering help, but the donations barely trickled in. Apparently, people weren't as eager to bankroll her lifestyle as she thought. People weren't nearly as willing to bankroll Emily's lifestyle as she'd expected. Before long, the drama spread through the family like a brush fire. One of my aunts called me, saying she'd heard I was being unreasonable. But after I calmly explained everything I'd been paying for, her attitude changed fast. She really expected you to keep covering her rent? She asked, stunned. Welcome to my world, I told her. When my parents eventually showed up at my door, it hit me just how far this whole mess had gone. This wasn't just about Emily's entitlement anymore. It was about the entire family enabling her. Everyone treated her problems like they were mine to fix. They didn't stop at guilt, either. My mom started spreading the story that I'd failed Emily and let the family down. Suddenly, cousins and relatives I hadn't spoken to in years were reaching out, lecturing me with messages like, family comes first, and it's not right to let her struggle. But as the days passed, Emily's image of having everything under control began to fall apart. Through mutual friends, I heard she'd been evicted and had moved back in with my parents. And of course, that still wasn't enough for her. She expected to be catered to there, too. One friend told me she overheard Emily complaining about the food at home. She's mad your parents don't cook her real meals, my friend said, laughing. She even joked they should hire someone to take care of her now that you're not doing it anymore. Hearing that only confirmed I'd made the right choice. If my family wanted to keep enabling her, that was on them. I wasn't going to burn myself out for someone who couldn't manage basic appreciation. Emily's spiral continued. Living back with my parents, she was treated like a helpless child. They catered to her every demand, draining what little savings they had left to keep her comfortable. At the same time, they doubled down on blaming me, acting like I'd committed some unforgivable betrayal by cutting her off. Relatives told me Emily was still spreading lies, telling anyone who would listen that I'd abandoned her during a hard time. She left out the part where she'd lived off me for years while flashing her privilege like it was her birthright. But her downfall wasn't just financial, it was social, too. Word spread about her GoFundMe scheme, and the same friends who used to join her for fancy dinners suddenly stopped answering her calls. Without me footing the bill, she didn't have much to offer them anymore. The final breaking point came when my parents called me in a full-blown panic. Emily had apparently opened a credit card in their names and maxed it out on a shopping spree. Now they were desperate, begging me to help because they couldn't make the payments. I couldn't help but laugh. After all the defending, enabling, and blaming, they still had the nerve to come crawling back. This is your mess to deal with, I told them calmly. You chose to support her. You chose to ignore the warning signs. Now you're facing the consequences. For once, they didn't argue. Maybe they finally understood that I wasn't going to swoop in and save her again. That was the last time I heard from any of them. I moved on with my life, putting my energy into building a future without their constant chaos dragging me down. It took years to undo the damage, but I came out stronger in the end. As for Emily, the last I heard, she was still living with my parents, stuck in the same cycle of entitlement and excuses. Part of me felt a little sorry for them, trapped by the mess they'd helped create. But mostly, I felt relieved. They made their choices. Now they had to live with them.